Hi, this is Professor Holly Johnson, and this is a presentation on how to write your outline for your research paper for English 112. So your proposal's been accepted, and now you have to figure out how to write an outline, and that begins with doing some research. If you're feeling anxious about the research, feel free to come back to this video after watching the research materials video, because that gives you more sense of how to go online and get a hold of research data. There's a lot of information there. So it talks about EBSCOhost, where there's a little screen capture of that here, and you can see what that looks like. So yeah, that will teach you how to use the online databases, but that's definitely step one. So check out that video and then come back to this one if you haven't looked at it already. Okay, here's the thing. Sometimes people come email me, or they're anxious and they say, I can't find any good articles. I can't find any good articles. Help, help, help. A lot of times they say, well, I can only find anything, but it's just on Google. And I understand why people, that's the natural thing to go to, because that's what we use most of the time in our lives. But in this case, we're trying to find specifically scholarly data from journals, and most of those aren't archived on Google. You have to pay to access them, and the school gives you access because you're a student, which is why you have to go through those database searches. So, but let's go to the next slide and talk about a little bit about how you can get help with it if you're struggling with your search. First of all, the librarians at the school are really, really great. There's not broad holdings of actual physical books in our libraries, but we have great resources available to us, both in terms of the people there and in terms of what we got online. And since you're taking an online class anyway, it's a perfect fit. One of the things that the librarians will help you do is do better searches. The way that I've encouraged you to use EBSCOhost is to use the general settings and then to shift it so that instead of having to use like and, or, and not, which are called the Boolean connectives in your searching, you can just use the same kind of style searching as you use on Google. But even at that, it helps to use specific language that will make the things come up more quickly, and that sometimes means using like synonyms for certain words. So if you're okay, then let's suppose that you found lots and lots of stuff and you think like, well, I can't possibly read all of these different articles. Definitely encourage you to save the articles that you find into something like Google Drive. You'll get lots of PDFs, and it can be easy to just lose track of them. But if you keep them all in one place, and Google Drive will just sort of save them for you, and you have access to it through your student email account, at least that way, wherever you are, you have access to the data and you won't lose it. So that's step one of just the paperwork. Step two, you got to look through the paperwork and skim it. Nobody expects you, certainly not me, to read every single thing that you find from cover to cover. That's just not realistic. So what you want to do is skim through your sources and find the best ones, put them in one pile, eliminate stuff that you know is unscholarly, bias, or something wrong with it, it's out of date. You don't, whatever the problem is, put that in the definitely not using it pile. If you're not sure if it fits which file to fit it in, use the index, use the table of contents, look at the little abstract that's on the top of a lot of articles that gives you a sense of what's in it, and read the sections that relate to your topic and skip the stuff that's off topic, and consider a pile that is for, I'm not sure if I'm going to use it, but it could be helpful later, because sometimes if you find your paper isn't long enough, when you get to the sort of finishing it up stage and you have 8 pages and you know you need 10, that's the time to dip into that pile of, I wasn't sure if I was going to use it, but now that I need a little bit more, I can go back to that pile. So it's not like the absolutely, definitely perfect pile, but the if I need to go back to it pile. So that's there's the perfect pile, the if I need it pile, and the definitely not pile. Then when you've got them separated out, go through the best of them and read them and take notes on them. I find Post-its, little index cards for me are helpful. Other people have other ways of taking notes directly on documents. use whatever system you use that helps you keep track of what data is in the things that you're reading. Separate the information into categories. Let's say again that you're writing about law enforcement in Trenton, how the cutback of police officers in Trenton is related to certain types of crime, let's say handgun crime. Okay, so your argument is that, you know, if you look at trends in law enforcement, you see that this is something that happens, and we can see that it's happening in Trenton, and here's what we can do about it. A good thesis will have like that next piece, and that's based on what research you're able to find. What research shows you has been effective in curtailing gun violence in any kind of place that's similar to Trenton. So let's say that's what you're doing. In that case, you're going to have information about gun violence from maybe different states. You're going to have information specifically about Trenton. You're going to have information specifically about all kinds of other crime that maybe that's in the I'm not going to use this right now pile. But even in the pile of stuff that you know you're going to use, think about what different categories it fits to, like, make sense to break it into, because those might be the actual sections of your paper. The first section may be talking about, you know, which things have worked in other places, then looking at Trenton and why it might work using those same strategies to reduce gun violence, something like that. So that's what I mean. Separate your information into categories. Then you're going to turn what you have into an outline that makes some kind of sense. And this is the key part of this module that we're doing. So do one version on paper just to get your ideas down. It doesn't matter how messy they are. Then the next draft you can do on your computer so that you can cut it and paste it easily. But if you're a visual person in particular, you can do the kinds of things that are, you know, shown here, mind mapping, different things. If you just prefer to write it out like a regular old outline that just you can use in a document form, do that, whichever works for you. Just remember, keep your thesis always in mind. Everything in your paper has to serve that thesis. My example that I used before about gun violence in Trenton, remember, the thesis has to be bigger than there's a gun problem in Trenton. That's just basically a statement of fact. You have to argue something bigger than that. You have to be making a point. The research shows that this is a problem and that there are ways that it could be addressed, and these are the ways that it could be addressed, and here's why I think so, based on the research that I've looked at and that I've read. That's your actual analysis. So your thesis has to be that, and if you know that's right at the top of your outline, then everything else can work to serve it. Once you've done all of those other preliminary pieces, this is what I'm kind of looking for. So if you're really stuck, like, what does she want? How does she want me to put it on the page? This is what I'm looking for. What are the questions you're addressing? What is that thesis? Because that's really crucial. What are the key sources you're going to be looking at? You may not have all your sources yet, but you should have some basic ones, some key sources. Here are how these sources are going to work to prove that thesis. Here's what's going to go in my first supporting section. Here's what's going to go in my next supporting section. So if you're really stuck, just follow this exact format. It works for, you know, research papers in any different type of class. So follow this if you aren't sure. Just review it after you've got what you've got down, polish it, ask yourself, is there any better way to order your evidence? And then if you could add more, you'll be adding all along. The outline's just a starting point, but this helps you figure out, it's like a roadmap for you. So the real thing about an outline is that it has to be something you can follow. So it's if you feel like you try it one way and it doesn't work, try a different strategy until you've got one that really works for you. That's the end. So good luck with your research outline.